Welcome to Ignorance is Infinite, the podcast where father and daughter discuss topics that are generational. Everything's on the table about building wealth, and all knowledge is included.
And today we're going to hit the topic of racism. Is it overt or subconscious?
Now, funny you should mention that, right? We've had a bunch of discussions. We've talked about different things, and recently I had you over to the house and had you watch this show called Newsroom. It's an older show from HBO. There was an episode in particular, since you're a journalist, I thought you'd really be into it, called Red Teaming. And after we sat there and watched the episode, at the end, I turned to you. I'm like, oh, right, it's a cool episode. And you're like, yeah, it's all right. Didn't have enough black people. And I was like, didn't really understand where that was going. So why don't you elaborate your feelings?
Because I grew up, you put me in a private school, which was predominantly white, and I lived in the suburbs. So I wasn't really aware of, oh, I'm the only black girl in this class, or the only black girl when we're walking around in the neighborhood or in the park. And then for some reason, once I started college and I started getting into my professional work, now I'm overtly aware of, oh, I'm the minority here. There's not a lot of black people in the room per se. So like if you think of in February this month with the whole Golden Globe scandal and people are questioning, okay, can we really trust whether if they're the best judge of if a movie is worthy of a Golden Globe, because out of 87 people who vote on the awards, there are 0 black people. And that's important, right?
Voting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't know about that part of it. I did go in and start doing a little bit of research, reading up on it, or reading what I think was the interview that was the impetus of it. Because it really had, from what I read, had to do with the television side of it. They felt there's diversity on the movie side, but on the television side, which they kind of think is, even for the Golden Globes, is not the cream de la creme. But they talked about there's so many programs on with black characters driven by black people, black directors. And this person was running off names that could be, nominated as best actors, best actress, supporting names I never even heard of. Some of the shows I never heard of. And one show in particular, I think it's called I May Destroy You, is a very heavy topic about a person who went to a club, a lady got raped and couldn't remember it, and how she deals with it throughout the show, and some overtness on the show itself. And he just was like aghast that this wasn't nominated.
I think it's kind of like a chicken and the egg situation.
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to representation and what was I going to say was that word? Well, first about representation, right? And representation and access, okay? And it kind of is like this cycle, I think, because you need to be able to get your foot in the door. Nobody is able to get into, per se, the Golden Globes journalists who vote on these awards.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get in, you need representation. And if there are people in there who can't be the voice for underrepresented groups and movies and films and all that, then it's natural for like non-black people to not know a bunch of black films and to not even think, hey, there's no black people on our team. It doesn't even cross their mind. But it's so important as far as representation goes, because like we talked about Modern Love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Modern Love is a show on Amazon, if you don't know. It's based off of the New York Times podcast, which is just an anthology of a bunch of different love stories all around New York City. So as you can imagine, it's very diverse. And the Amazon series is only relationships with white women.
Mm-hmm.
And they received a lot of criticism because they were saying, this is about love stories in New York City. So you not showing anybody other than white women as a love interest could possibly make other people of color, Spanish people, Asian people, black people, feel like, okay, I'm not considered the love interest, or I'm not considered like people would want me in a romantic way.
I wonder too, is there a bigger question, right? So we talk about representation, we talk about access. There's a lot more content out there. It's growing every day. And now we look at a Academy Award, Emmys, Golden Globes, and start to say, well, should it be dominated or overtaken by this diversity? Or are there other avenues? So like, us as Black folks have the NAACP awards, Hispanics have these Latin awards, where we can be as proud as we want, but are white people represented in those things? If we're flipping that type of thing, because one of the weird things I thought of when I was reading an article, and it is done by a young Black female writer. So again, that's going to be her narrative, her perspective, something that she wants, and every right entitled to it, yourself included, to say that there's not enough white people in the show. But the content really becomes, to me, the key. And as we continue to produce content, we have to look at what we've been putting out there. Yes, there's a lot of shows and movies, and we're starting to get more and more recognition. But for a long time, there's been a gap.
Well, what do you mean dominated by diversity? Like, do
So,
you watch when you showed me the newsroom episode?
mhm.
I think that should have been the last thing that I thought about. And I should have just looked at the quality of the work, the content of the show, instead of immediately thinking this isn't diverse.
To me, it shouldn't be the lead. Like I showed a Hispanic friend at work, told him about the same thing, and literally, like while he works, he watched a lot of things. He watched it and was like, "Yo, shit is great." And this is a complaining Hispanic 30-year-old. So again, generational, right? I'm in my lower 50s, and you're 23. So it's going to be different based on what we've been exposed to. I've had different conversations. But the flip side of modern love is, all right, so your mother watches Insecure. I don't know if you watch it too.
I showed her it.
So isn't that the antithesis of modern love? Because I know there's not a lot of white love in there or a lot of white insecurity. Yet, what are we showing when we do get that representation? How insecure we are? Yes, it's relatable, but can we get beyond that?
No. Well, have you watched Insecure?
I've watched a few episodes, and what are you gonna say about that? I don't watch it, like it's not destination television for me. So I've watched it a couple of times to try it out, maybe to sit down and watch with your mother. But I really can't get through it because it doesn't speak to me.
I love that show. It's
Which is fine.
I watch Girls on HBO.
Which show? Girls.
It's
Again, saw maybe an episode or two, know about the writer and little things.
It's basically the predecessor to Insecure, but it's just white women.
And they were insecure.
I think too much into the title. Everyone's insecure.
Because they got nominated a lot in the past as,
Insecure or Girls?
Girls. Like the writer, director. And since she was a creator of the show, I don't know if the Aisa girl from Insecure does as much behind the camera work as the girl that was doing Girls. So they kind of, fold that in when they start, oh my God, this is so good because.
I think it's important that it's so in your face. Like I think Issa specifically designed the show knowing I want my target audience to be Black women. I want Black women to feel represented and to finally have a story
that's a good point. Her target audience. So is Modern Love saying their target audience is diversity? Now, again, the girl in her article complained about like the marketing showed more diversity, but the episodes don't. So they're kind of a bait and switch.
You want the most money, so you're going to pander to everyone.
Oh, pander. Ooh, that sounds almost like Oprah Obama. That's a little thing between us. When we say we're center, we're Obama and Oprah. When we say we're to the left as a Black person, it's Ta-Nehisi Coates, Black Panther, that type of thing. So I just wanted to point that out.
Off the top of my head, Michael B. Jordan is dating Lori Harvey, Steve Harvey's sister.
Yep.
And there's this controversy of people thinking their relationship is fake because Michael B. Jordan has like a movie coming up with, I think it's with a Black love interest, and they're saying he wants to gain like attention from Black females and have them be like, oh look, this Black relationship, Black love. And
so the question first is, you keep throwing these words out, right? It's the Golden Globes controversy. Are they really controversies? No.
They are.
They're not. It's not a controversy that somebody said it.
Yes.
it's a controversy is if there's evidence, journalist, daughter of mine, that says, yeah, there's a pattern here. That's the only reason he did it. Does he need to? I don't think so. I mean, he got a lot of fans, Sexiest Man Alive cover, People Magazine, all that good stuff. So now it's funny, right? Because I watch a lot of like videos, and as I start looking for these things, I'm getting suggestions. So there was this video about when Steve Harvey was talking to Monique about selling out, and she was holding the line, and it's some girl, black lady that talks about these things, and she's hardcore. So she's sitting there watching it and listening and whatnot. And Steve is kind of like, because Monique went after Oprah, Tyler Perry, Lee Dan, and told them to suck her part that she don't have on the stage. And Steve was like, it felt like you crossed the line. And then, again, the video was like an hour, so I didn't watch the whole thing. But one of the headlines was that he said, for, $4 million or $1 million, I'll dance like a monkey. To get paid. Is this line that you have to get in, and are you going to get in there with such great integrity that you have to hold the line, or are you going to get in and then establish what you need to establish?
I don't know. Well, we talked about this the other day, how I'm averse to Oprah. But I watched Oprah's talk at a Stanford Business College, and she talked about, somebody asked her, are you aware, like, sometimes you're the only Black woman in the room when you have these big fancy meetings? And she said no, that she doesn't let someone put that on her, that she won't let someone make her feel like she's the minority in a sense, and that she wouldn't like call it out even if it were true, or if there was racism in her office, she would just move on and do something.
The funny thing, right, is you're saying, does she point out that she's the only Black person in the room? It has to be obvious. You're the only Black person in the room, or that room. So it doesn't need, it's really the question of the acceptance and what did it take for those white people to be comfortable, because that always seems to be part of the issue. Comfort, especially like when they talk about head coaching jobs in the NFL, 32 teams, the population, the workforce is mainly Black. But when it comes to those high-level executives making a decision, the owner has to feel comfortable talking to this person, being around this person, sharing time with families. And that's what we need to get to as we continue to say we want to excel, because we're not going to create our own Black NFL, our own Black NBA, and we could do that stuff. But at 13% of the United States, then we don't hit that target market, target audience. So we need to, collaborate more and figure out that comfort level. Does that mean we have to, put ourselves in a box and not be ourselves? But are ourselves, should they be not as refined as they need to be? There's a lot of, gray area there.
And that makes me think of, okay, if we want to be 100% in our Blackness.
Whatever that means.
When you think of the Chinatowns, the Little Italies, do you think a community of all Black people is racist?
No, but the history of this country created the problem that right now, Black areas such as Harlem or places in Brooklyn get gentrified, right? The people that are there, they kind of push them there into these like the housing policies of the 50s were keep everything separate, and projects weren't for minorities. They were for people coming back from war, so they would have housing. But eventually they used that idea once they opened up the suburbs to kind of redline and say, all right, we'll keep them down there and we'll start living in the suburbs. And there's a lot of laws on the books where, people felt if a Black person or Hispanic was moving into a suburb, it's going to lower the property. We can get into that at another time, because we definitely want to talk about ownership and wealth and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, we don't have a Black community that is non-projectional, non-part of the projects, not separated from that. Not that we don't totally, I don't know all of the areas in the United States or even in the tri-state area, but we don't have a Chinatown or Koreatown. Even the Hasidic Jews have their own community where their money stays inside that community a lot longer before it goes out to anybody else. So it helps prop them up.
We mentioned that this could be a geographical issue as well.
Mm-hmm.
New York. So let's say somebody in, I don't know, the Carolinas. They could be like, we have tons of Black communities. It's for Black small businesses, and it's a lot more normalized.
Well, we'd have to investigate it, right? Do they? You showed me another video about heirs, remember? And it's like, it's not on paper properly, so 20 people may own some property, but if they don't really know about it or have the money to protect it, some dude, in this case, it was some white dude that was just collecting a lot of property, goes into court, talks about something, buys a piece of property, and then throws these Black people off because they didn't know how to go about protecting that. Land ownership is the key to building wealth. That's going to be without question. But to get there, you have to have a good job, good career.
So you're 40 acres and a mule, man? That's reparation.
I've heard that phrase a lot. I don't really know the origin of it exactly. I think those were parcels they gave to slaves after they were free, because then people stole them right back. So, you got Black Wall Street, you got the whole Seneca Village that ended up becoming Central Park. So there's a lot of things that we can still be mad about, and there's a lot of things that we have to hold our hat on and create that marker, that baseline, and say, all right, look, this is still possible. This is what it should be. This is how we should traject. When we talk about generational, right? Yes, you being half Black, half Hispanic, going to Catholic schools, because we took you out of that and we moved to the suburbs. So we started that trek. And then you went out at the tender age 23 and bought a house. So you started that track. You have an infant daughter that you now have to go through all of this that you're wading through about whether or not she should go to a Catholic school and be the only Black person in a bunch of white people. That was another video I sent you. And I had just saw it yesterday. It was on the Breakfast Club. It had Killer Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking to Envy. And he was supporting public schools, that we should be focused more on that, whether we create them as charter schools, but in a Black community. But again, where's that base? Where's that home base? Do we call it Black Town? Africa Town? What do we call it?
Not Black Town.
Why not?
But when you think about, okay, let's start reversing some of the effects of racism. And we'll pay attention to Black schools or affirmative action, or okay, I'll throw you a bone and add an all Black cast, or this and that. People start saying that's discriminatory as well. Like there's lawsuits against colleges. Why do you have to have a certain amount of Black students, and that impedes on whether my son or daughter can get it? So people start thinking that's some sort of low level racism.
Right, because their kid probably wasn't going to get in anyway because they was a C student. But we have this belief that white people still get all those extra things anyway. I mean, they've reached the presidency of the United States. When the son, George W. Bush, ended up becoming president, they say he was a C student in school. I mean, how did he get to the top office as a C student? Well, there's a lot of things going on in the background that help, lift that up. We can't worry about affirmative action in the sense that it worries somebody else, because there's always somebody that feels like they're being kept out. So we need to grow that pot. And when it comes to college, there's a lot of people saying they're building up all this debt. Is it really helping them get the career or the job that they really want? Or are they stymied and kept from building wealth because they're just spinning their wheels trying to pay interest on these high student loans? That was another thing that we focused on. Make sure you didn't have a lot of debt. Practically had none. That is very important. If we start communicating to people and letting them know, how do you start to build ownership? You have to get out of debt, or you have to avoid it as much as possible and be more smart about how you go about getting that. So we can't focus about some people getting mad, because social media has made it such that anybody could say one thing, somebody gets on it, and if two people said it, all of a sudden it's a controversy. Not really. Keep it moving.
Controversy is not the right word.
Huh? Maybe.
It's some buzz. That word.
And then I kind of wanted to go back to, right? I was talking about the content that we put out there, right? And again, there's, 30 years between us. So we didn't watch all the same things. When you mentioned Family Matters, I started creating this list, right, of all the black sitcoms,
Mm-hmm.
starting with Good Times, at least for my generation. But when I got to Family Matters came out in 1995. You were born in 97. So you were watching reruns
Mm-hmm.
on some channel. So it wasn't even like in that time. What bothered you about that show? I know you said you didn't really like it, and I thought maybe we was talking about some things, but I'm wondering if now that we've had these types of discussion about content, our representation, maybe you see what bothered you, or did it really bother you?
You have to go to therapy for it.
Huh?
Unearth what peeved me about that show. But it's weird. I was peeved by Oprah since I was a kid.
And Family Matters is nothing like Oprah. It doesn't dumb down, I didn't feel like it was centrist in terms of how it communicated. Huh?
I liked Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Which was more Obama Oprah.
How so?
They were rich. They were Cosby. Now, divorce yourself from the Cosby that's controversy, right? He's in jail for what he did. But prior to that, the show, he was a doctor, she was a lawyer, they lived in a house. It was very pristine. It's something that we could aspire to, but it didn't feel real to us. Compared to prior to that, we had Good Times, we had the Jeffersons. After Family Matters, did you watch My Wife and Kids?
Of course, everyone did.
Did you like that?
Everyone loves My Wife and Kids.
The Bernie Mac show.
It's okay.
House of Pain.
Mm-mm.
Funny show. Blackish. Blackish is kind of like Fresh Prince, Cosby combined because they're well off.
And you start getting into some more buzz.
What do you mean?
A lot of people. I forget the producer of that show. I think it's Kenya something.
Right. It's a dude.
Yeah, he's in
Kenya Barris.
And then Black AF on Netflix. And a lot
right, and then he got Mix-ish. He's starting to build something. We can't let white people tear that down. And as black people, we can't tear that down.
Black people are trying to tear it down.
They shouldn't. Unless, because, again, Blackish, then he did Mix-ish. I mean, I guess technically we should watch Mixes because, mix. Both you and your husband are both mixed, right?
People say he's an obsession with lighter skinned black people. It's always ish.
Dre is not light.
But he's with a light skinned woman. Which is a whole other thing. We should have an episode on colors.
Well, I don't know. You can't fight that battle. You kind of like yourself. And that was something.
I fight this battle with Christian, even though I'm lighter than he is, because Vera is darker. So I don't want those stereotypes in her mind.
Well, then don't let them be. A light-skinned black person is still a black person. Remember that.
Invitation.
There's some shows that I've never watched that I'm interested, and two of them were animated. You ever watched the Boondocks?
No. The Proud Family.
That's the other one. So what was that relatable to in terms of the shows, other black family shows?
I don't know. It was just funny, wholesome.
But it was mother, father, kids.
Yeah.
A black version of The Simpsons?
Somewhat. That was funny.
So, I mean, that's an area. And then again, getting back to black content. Are you going to put something out there? Are you going to write the script of what you want to see? Produce something? Work on something? What's your favorite black movie with the most black characters in it? Since Newsroom didn't have enough black people or representation at that time, what is your favorite?
All black cast. Maybe like two. I think when we watched the episode, you were like, there's one guy in the back.
Well, you said you didn't see any, and that's why I mentioned who was in there. But, I mean, it shows with predominantly black cast. It just depends on what. What is it that you see?
See that.
Because I looked up the top 10 movies by black directors, black movies that get high scores. 12 Years a Slave, Do the Right Thing, Straight Outta Compton, Get Out, Training Days, Boys in the Hood, Creed, The Five Heartbeats, Salma, they all seem to have that the struggle portion of it, as opposed to, all right, we're living good. How do we get there? How do we help others? Where are we taking it next? Like that seems to be missing. I think there's a void in there.
I don't know. My knee-jerk reaction is to blame non-Black people, but I think it's like it's part non-Black people, part Black. Because even with
Everything is.
the Black AF show, which is like the spinoff of Blackish, right, or another subsect of that empire,
Well, yeah.
and they were like, "Why is the story about?" It was an all-Black family that was rich, and they're like, "This is so unrelatable. We want to see shows where like." You know what we're actually going through, the struggles, and it's like they're actually like.
But you've seen that. You've seen that over and over.
That's what
Those type of shows are out there, whether they were sitcoms, whether they're shows like The Wire that show the grittiness. There's a whole group of shows, and again, 5 people, 10 people, if they want to complain about Black as fuck, and that's what the show is really called, but none of them really are Black as fuck. That could be what you really focus on. You can't hate. He's building something. The question is, what's he doing with that? Now, he has a platform. He has people's ears. He has content on different things, streams. He's done what Law and Order's done, or CSI, where they've created extra other shows, and it's gone on for many years. Where's the next step to that? Where's the evolution of that? Has he discovered somebody and helped produce them? That's the real growth.
Himself.
Huh?
Or has he already pigeonholed himself? Now he's that guy that
Never that. Then he'll be like those actors that's known for a famous part that wanted to break out of that because they become typecast. Is he typecast as a producer? No. People will want something ish. In fact, there's a show I think coming on ABC about economics or something, like home economics in school, and they use the ish part of it to say, no, we're not that show. But it was a play on it because it's so popular right now. You got to strike when the iron is hot. Angry-ish. I'm not really angry, but I might be.
I think that the other thing, me and Christian were talking about how in my school, which for those who don't know, my dad sent me to like a fancy high school that was predominantly white. And I got taught like how to write a check or like how to save or what's a good credit score. And Christian,
look where you're at. So the question becomes, how do we get that in public schools that are overcrowded and lacking resources? Do we come up with our own non-for-profit to say the things that are taught in private school that are not being taught in other schools? Again, right? Eventually, we're talking about building wealth, and it's a whole. It's a Pandora's box of stuff, and each thing, as we talk about it and we bring light to it, and we can pontificate about it and be like, oh my God, should help us lead to somewhere else, to talk about something else and bring it back to that main point. How do we help people? And how do we stop putting people in a box?
It's a lot to unpack, but we're going to do it.
We're going to do it. I think this was a good first start. I look forward to putting this out there and seeing what people have to say about it, and then circling back and doing another topic.
Yep.
Well, this has been Ignorance is Infinite with Daddy and Deuce. See you next time. Thanks.